those jazz hands.
Brought to you by Scoobly Doodly Doo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast. And I hope you guys are having a good week or a good weekend, wherever you are in that time. And right now, I'm enjoying my coffee once again, my good French roast, my good friend, Mr. French Roast right here. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good week. So how are you, Chris?
I'm doing great here with my mint tea, and it's actually snowing here. We had a good.
Gosh.
Yeah, we got about 3 or 4 inches of snow here, and so it's been a nice day just to chill out inside in a warm place and look out the window and see all the white. It hadn't snowed like this in a couple of years now, so it's actually pretty nice. I must say I was looking forward to it, and it hasn't disappointed thus far. So,
oh, beautiful. That's nice. We had some good rain here a few days ago, and this week it was, I think the low was like a 32, but now today the high was 70, and it was sunny today. And then maybe at the end of next week we could have a little bit of rain. But yeah, it's getting colder everywhere.
Goodness gracious, a high of 70 though. That sounds incredible.
That was today, and it was sunny today, so I spent some time outside.
That is pretty amazing. Well, today we are going to be talking about music of the past, but not necessarily the 70s. We have talked about the 70s, and that was a really nice trip down memory lane. And we're going to continue with that trip down memory lane, but it's going to be a little bit more personal today. And so today we're going to be talking about songs that really appealed to us at some point in our lives and that we've just kind of gone back to see if it still means the same thing, or does it sound as good as we thought it sounded way back when. Since we are both musicians and we've, over the years, found ourselves interested in different things and just learning different approaches, different ways of playing, our ears kind of develop. And we also, as we get older, our tastes kind of change. And so it's just interesting to go back to some of these songs and see if they sound the same way that they did back then. And most of the time they don't really sound the same. And in some cases, maybe we find we don't like it as much. And in some cases we find we still like it just as much, or maybe we even find something new that we didn't really understand about the song before, or we didn't pick out when we heard it before. And so it's a very interesting experiment to go back to these songs. And the song I'm going to pull up today I've got a treat for you, I must say, because this is something that I heard in the early 90s when I was in middle school.
Sweet.
And this was a live concert on Saturday Night Live, of all things. It was one of the musical guests. And I just remember at the time just thinking there was something really special about this performance, and it just sounded really interesting. And so the group is Arrested Development, and they had a hit at the time called Tennessee. And when I first heard Tennessee, I thought, oh, okay, that's an interesting song. It's kind of got this. It's a form of rap, but it's a little bit different than a lot of the rap and hip hop you heard at the time, because the cadences were a little bit different, and he would almost be kind of singing, and he would. And almost a monotone, but his pitch would move a little bit. But I just found that his rapping style was very fresh and very different for the time. And the rapper is Speech. His rapper name is Speech. He was born as Todd Thomas, and he's the de facto leader of Arrested Development. And so I found the rapping style interesting, but this particular performance is really different. And I'll talk a little bit more about why after I play it, because I think playing it will help to answer some questions. But I just found this to be an incredible performance. And going back to it, well, I'll tell you how I feel about it after we check it out. So here it is.
Tennessee, 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 Tennessee.
I've been real stressed, down and out, losing ground. Although I am black and proud, problems got me pessimistic. Brothers and sisters messing up. Why does it have to be so damn tough? I don't know where I can go to let these ghosts out of my skull. My grandma passed, my brother's done. Never had once felt so alone. I know you're supposed to be the steering wheel, not just my spare tire. Lord, I ask you to be my guide for centuries. For some strange reason they had to be. He guided me to Tennessee. Take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan. We got a relationship, talking to each other every night and day. Although you're superior, for me. We talk to each other in a friendship way. Then out of nowhere, you tell me to break. Out of the country, and into more country. Past guys go into Ripley, where the ghosts of childhood haunts me. Walk the roads my forefathers walked. Climb the trees my forefathers hung from. Ask those trees for all their wisdom. They tell me my ears are so young. Go back to from whence y'all came. Your family tree, your family name. For some strange reason it had to be. It guided me to Tennessee and it goes like, take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan, Lord.
The drums give the weary strength. The bass gives the neglected warmth. A heart imitates the rhythm of the drums.
Thump, thump, we rise.
Thump, thump, thump,
Fight, my ancestors tell me fight. Whatever's in the darkness, all comes to light.
thump, thump.
All right.
Come on, y'all.
Now I see the importance of history. Why my people be in the mess that they be. Many journeys for freedom made in vain by brothers on a corner playing ghetto games. I ask you, Lord, why you enlighten me with up the enlightenment of all my folks. He said, cause I set myself on a quest for truth, and he was there to quench my thirst. But I am still thirsty, Lord knows the Lord allowed me to drink some more. He said what I am searching for are the answers to all which are in front of me. The ultimate truth started to get blurry. For some strange reason it had to be. It was all a dream about Tennessee. Take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan. Take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan.
Oh, won't you let me?
Come on.
Won't you help me?
Help me out.
Won't you help me?
Come on. Make it for me, y'all.
Understand your take me home. Take me home. Home. Take me to another day. Take me
Let me understand your plan.
Wow, I like that.
I saw your face at that point where like the song just takes a turn, and you know the point I'm talking about, right?
It does, but it's not like a huge turn. It's just halfway through or a little bit past halfway through. they changed the harmony underneath.
Yes.
There's a guitar and the keyboard, and okay. I think maybe they wanted to keep it interesting, and they certainly did. And it changed that texture of the tune. The harmony changed a bit, but the groove is the most important thing in that. And there's underlying Latin kind of groove. That kind of I don't know what kind of Latin groove it is. There's a funk thing and like a hip hop kind of thing, but there's also that underlying Latin thing with the percussion going on in there. And then they changed the harmony halfway through, and really cool, very tight band. And I like the DJ in there. That was pretty hip.
Yeah, the turntable. That's, and it's funny. I think one of the reasons I thought about this was because of the conversation we had last week where we were talking about DJs and how there might be collaborations. And this, I thought this was a good example of some of that collaboration happening in the early 90s. And I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in this song, and there's a lot of parts to it. And I like that. I like the way that it all fits together, and it's an ensemble performance, and a lot of today's music where it's so very much about one artist making music in a studio, oftentimes, or perhaps an artist and a producer. This was something much more organic, and I just thought it was really interesting what sort of happened. And I've checked out other performances of this song by Arrested Development, and I have never seen anything quite like this one for this particular song. Most of the performances are pretty much a take off the record version, but I'm just really curious about why they took the direction that they happened to take in this song and why this is the only time they did it, because I thought it was really cool changing the harmonies underneath. But
so that's not on the record?
No, it's not. No. The record is pretty much the same.
And is the tune itself shorter on the record? Because this is pretty a long performance.
It is a little bit shorter on the record, and this is actually, for Saturday Night Live too. I mean, this is an incredibly long. I don't think you'll see a performance this long ever again on Saturday Night Live, probably. This is like a full 5 minutes, or even maybe a little past 5 minutes. So it's long for an SNL performance.
I was thinking that too. Yeah, I was like, wow, they're kind of letting it grow organically, and they got a great arrangement. I wish I knew the original, but I really like this one. This is great.
And it wasn't easy to find it too. I mean, for some reason, I had been kind of looking for this for years, and I finally found it on archive.org. They happen to have it, the full version of it. Like even Peacock, the network, the Peacock is NBC's new streaming network. Even they didn't have it. They had the episode, but they cut out all the musical performances. So I don't know if that's because of copyright or royalties or whatever, but so I was happy to finally have found it. And going back to it, it sounds as good as I remember it, and even a little bit better.
That's cool. Isn't that great when that happens?
It is. Those harmonies are hip. The groove is hip. It's tight, as you said. That bass player too, man. I mean, did you hear that? There's some nice bass lines in there, and he's get some vibrato on these lines, and it's just like, whoa, it's fat.
Yeah, that was live. That was great. I dig that. I'm glad that put me in a really good mood. I've never heard that song before. I've heard of Arrested Development, but not that tune. And that's a great band. Very cool. Okay, so I am going to. This is a song that I discovered in 1999 when the album came out. And I remember I bought this at Costco. And I liked the album. It was good. And in early 2000, when I went to Taiwan to visit initially, I had this on my little CD player, and I had this playing, and I listened to the whole album. I had some time, and I thought it was pretty good. and it had a kind of melancholy vibe to it. And I didn't know much about Chris Cornell at the time. But this is a tune that I recently heard again, and it really sounded. It was the songwriting and the form of the tune was even better than I realized. And so here's a tune called "Sun Shower" by Chris Cornell.
Disappear.
Okay, so that was Sun Shower, and that was Chris Cornell's first solo album in 1999. And I listened to that when I first got to Taiwan in early 2000. And I remember it was raining a lot. And I've never been to the East before. Never been to Japan or Taiwan or any of those countries. And it was fascinating to me, the chaos there. It was lovely chaos. If you've ever been to Taiwan, you know what I mean. It was wonderful. And I was a little bit down because it was raining a lot and it was a brand new experience. It was very exciting, but I was a little bit down, and I was just kind of adjusting to everything. And it was kind of a wonderful thing. And I remember listening to this whole album and listening to the song in particular. And if you listen to this song now, you realize that the song is beautiful because it has this organic kind of thing to where it grows and grows and grows. And at the very end, maybe like 80% of it, the drummer finally kicks out into this full beat. And the whole time for like 4 minutes, he never went into that full beat until the very end. And there's these long interludes in between the verses or going right before the chorus. And this song is very drawn out. And that's beautiful songwriting. And just his performance on it was very soulful. And you recognize that if you go back and listen to it at the very beginning, his vocal range is very limited on purpose. And then he goes through it, and it kind of stretches his vocal range, and he sings a little louder and a little bit louder. And it's just a beautiful example of great songwriting. And the whole band as well, this long crescendo for like 4 minutes. And the last minute or so, minute or 2 minutes, obviously this didn't get very much airplay on the radio, and the album didn't get a whole lot of success compared to Soundgarden, their other stuff. But I think this album is underrated, and listening today to it is just, there's such a maturity in songwriting and just not giving away the song right away, and it's just letting it grow. So that's why I chose it.
Yeah, this is a great track. And Chris Cornell, of course, in top form as always. And I do hear some elements of the Soundgarden approach to production. As you mentioned, the song is kind of a long crescendo. And since, most of the songs on the radio, they're looking for that quick fix kind of thing. I can understand how you have to, well, I should say first, I feel that there is an overall lack of patience in younger generations when it comes to music, and just really being open to hearing the artist's full vision. And long songs are becoming fewer and fewer and far between. I mean, we've always had short hits. There's always been the radio version for at least as long as there's been radio, really. It's been pretty rare that a really long form song would be played on the radio, and we know that there's the radio edit that's always shorter than the album version that's a little bit longer.
Except for a song like Stairway to Heaven. That was one of the few ones that got out that's a longer tune. That's the unusual thing, but everything, as you say, everything is a lot shorter, and there's nothing wrong if the song should be 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes or whatever. That's fine if it's not redundant. But a lot of times we need to let things breathe, and we need to be patient with them. We need to listen to a whole album and sit with it for a while.
Well, and where I was going is I think that that's really what makes this song special, is because it's not putting all out there in the front, and it takes its time, and it takes you on a musical journey. And that's why I feel like the patience has such a payoff, because, it built, and it is kind of brooding, but then there's this crescendo, and it reaches this high point where it's kind of like, it's like a happier feeling, right? It's like it's kind of brooding, and it's, perhaps going over memories or perhaps, thinking about the past, but then there's like this optimism to it. And it takes the time to get there, and you feel that optimism when the drum beat does kind of come in and everything kind of comes together. But it's kind of like a resolution, and it feels really good when you get there.
Yeah. And you notice, like on an engineering level, I noticed that this album has dynamics. It's not too compressed. You notice that? And the drummer was playing maybe with like rattan sticks or something. It wasn't with your normal stick. It was like very quiet. And then you can tell he's hitting harder at the end. So of course there is some compression in there, but not as much. It's really organic. You can tell when he's hitting harder, and you get that sensation. And that's just a great track. I'm not bored with that track, and you just have to be patient with it. It'll just take you through that journey. The volume goes up and the intensity goes up. That's just a great songwriting and performance.
It sure is. And, these are the kinds of songs that make good concert songs. How'd you think about that transition? That was good, right? Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I love it.
But these, but seriously, when you are sitting in a concert, people are always more open when they're in a concert because they're expecting a longer experience, right? They're expecting this journey. And the great thing about concerts is oftentimes there is just a different take on some of these songs, and they will perhaps extend them, and maybe there will be, maybe there's an interlude, maybe there's a solo, maybe it's just a different arrangement. It's more of a composition with movements even. And I'm going to talk about a concert that I attended in Seoul, Korea, of all places. So I went to high school in Seoul, Korea, and I went to Seoul American High School, which was on the military base in Yongsan in Seoul. And when I was in high school, my first girlfriend was a Korean woman, and she was really into music and into a lot of the same music that I was into, but also introduced me to some music. And one of the bands, she didn't introduce me to the band because I already knew who they were, but I had never really explored their music that much. And the band was Toto. And the only song that I knew of them was Africa, because that was the most famous song that they had, And so she introduced me to a lot more material. And then I discovered that, wow, this is an amazing multifaceted band with obviously, a lot of reverence for music history in general, from jazz to R&B to even classical, and you could just hear this incredible musicianship. That they're people, they really know their music, and also they're also sort of genre defying as well, because what are they exactly? Are they pop? Are they R&B? Are they? What are they? I mean, it is very hard to define them, because their music runs the gamut of styles and influences. But anyway, she was able to get a hold of some concert tickets, and they performed in Seoul in the year 1996, I think is when we attended this concert.
Whoa!
And Seoul had the Olympics in 1988, and so the concert ended up being in one of these Olympic stadiums that had been built. And so it was a really cool experience to go to this massive Olympic stadium. This concert was totally sold out, and the stadium was packed. And I'd never seen anything like that in my life. It was my first concert, my first real legit concert. And it was just like one of the best first concerts you could ask, because it was Toto. They were in top form. Jeff Porcaro had passed away at that point, I believe. So he was not on the drums on this particular concert, unfortunately, but that did not in any way diminish how great this concert was.
Was it Simon Phillips on the drums or somebody else?
I don't remember. I think it was actually Simon Phillips.
Oh, great.
I believe it was.
Awesome.
It was such a long time ago, and I didn't really know the personnel that well at that particular point in time. But I do remember that it was a great concert. I remember some of the songs that they played. You know, they played a lot of the classics. But I think I remember the tune that just really, like, you know, made the hairs on my neck stand up was Rosanna.
Oh yeah,
it's a great
Love
song.
The groove on that, isn't it? Isn't it a great groove?
It's an incredible song. It's one of their most well-known songs, but I just never get tired of it. So I had to go back to it, and I found a concert version of this that, you know, I think it's roughly what it would have been. But this concert does have Jeff Porcaro on the drums, and you know, he probably does make it a little bit better, maybe. But this is a great version of it. So I'm gonna play this, and then we'll talk about it. All right, kiddies, that's how you do an ending.
Yes, that's the extended, like, what do you call that? That's some funky ending, man. That's cool. They got all the hits. Yeah.
It is. And, thinking back to that concert that I attended, I remember, I can't remember if it was this song or if it was another song, but I do remember that it was quite an extended version, and that they did have lots of solos. And at one point they even broke into like a swing, like a jazz thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And I remember, cause I was just dabbling, I was really getting into jazz at that point in time. And I remember hearing them break out of that swing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. I think with a band like this, a lot of their tunes, you're not going to hear the same version because they're going to get bored of it. They're going to play a different version of it. And yeah, it's pretty complex sometimes. That especially what I just heard at the end. Some of those hits are really complex. And another thing, I didn't realize how good Steve Lukather was at singing. His vocals sound great on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great singer too. I guess they didn't have Bobby Kimball at that point. There's another singer singing his part when it goes up to the higher part. But,
yes, I'm not sure.
Fantastic. That was great.
Yeah, he was good too. Very good singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one was, I believe, was live in Paris, and a particularly good concert. Just damn near perfect. And of course, Rosanna is a Grammy Award-winning song. It, or at least I think it was the single version won Record of the Year in 1983. And so it is one of their hottest songs, but I like how they breathe new life into it. And I'm sure that, as you said, they probably did never play it quite the same way in any two concerts. So
yeah, and the thing that I noticed about it the most was there's a lot of joy in that performance. You notice that?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot. They're happy. They're just. It's not work. They're just going for it. And the backing vocals were spot on.
Yes. And also just all the different parts again, there's a lot to unpack in that song, from the keyboard parts to the line between the verses and the chorus. It's just it's not and it's not an easy song to play.
No. Yeah, I love it. That's a great performance. And every performance you hear, every live performance you hear from them, it's going to be different. And as you said before, they're not one genre. Sometimes they're pretty heavy, almost like hard rock. And sometimes they're R&B. Sometimes they sound very progressive, like a progressive rock band. But the thing about Toto is they're such good studio musicians. You hear them on the original Dune soundtrack. They're on that.
That's right. Yeah.
They don't sound like is that Toto? Yes, it is. And they work with Quincy Jones, with Michael Jackson. They wrote a lot of that stuff for that, I think, the Thriller album, but they've played on a whole bunch of other albums, and they've got their own thing going, and they're great songwriters and studio session guys. It's just amazing.
Yes, you'll get your money's worth at a Toto concert. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the great thing about them is some bands, their prime only lasts for like 2 or 3 years, and maybe 5 if you're lucky. But still in the 90s, you consider when that song was written. I think it was 1980, 1979. I'm not sure, but it had spanned over 10 years. And if you just noticing that clip of them, I don't know when that was recorded. That must have been the 90s sometime, maybe early 2000. No, 90s.
That was 1990.
1990. Okay. So that's over 10 years, and the band still has this kind of fire and this joy of playing, and they're at their, you said when you saw them in Seoul, Korea, it was packed. And was it 94? Was it 1994?
96.
96. And they're still going.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, they're just, so what longevity they have as musicians, and sound great.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if, at least in part, that had to do with like the discipline of a musician versus, rock band / artist, because it takes a certain amount of discipline to get the skill level and to maintain it, and oftentimes with these rock bands, they start hitting the drugs and the alcohol, and that just kind of wastes away your brain. And I think that could largely be why many of these bands sort of reach a point where they're over the hill, because those things, the hard partying takes its toll after many years. Whereas the musicians that lead more disciplined lives and stay away from the extremes in that, or the extremes of those diversions, they tend to be able to hold on to it for a lot longer.
I think they were just really, I think maybe, they weren't perfect. Toto and, I think Steve Lukather has talked about, everybody did cocaine in the 80s. Studio guys did cocaine, and, it wasn't perfect. They weren't like super disciplined, but they had the skills. They were so they worked on their skill, but especially that band were so talented and so natural at it, especially in the early 80s. They kind of ruled the studios.
Yeah, Steve Gadd is another session musician, and I saw him in concert in Hong Kong just a few years ago, and he was 70, I think, when I saw this concert, and he was still just playing amazingly, and there's another guy who just very disciplined and really spent a lot of time honing those skills. And I mean, if he's lost anything, it's hard to hear,
That's great. Just take care of yourself, keep playing music, keep that creativity and that sense of wonder up. And that's cool. Okay. So now we're going to go to my concert. I went to this concert when I was a sophomore in high school, maybe. This was my first rock concert, and this was in Mesa, and the venue was pretty big. I forgot the name of the venue, but I went to this concert with a family friend called Darren, who still lives, I think maybe he's in Mesa, but shout out to Darren. And I have great memories from that concert because it was loud, but not too loud. And I remember the band, the acoustic guitar players, they played an acoustic set, just those two members, for about 20, 30 minutes, and it was great. I didn't know what they were playing, but it was just wonderful. And this band did a cover of Roundup by Yes. This band is called GTR, and it's got Steve Hackett and Steve Howe. And Steve Howe was from a band called Yes, and Steve Hackett was famous for his early days in the band Genesis. So here is the band called GTR.
will change. You must move on. Follow your dream. When the heart rules the mind, one look and love is blind. When you want the dream to last, take a chance, forget the past. When the heart rules the mind, one look and love is blind. When you want the dream to last, take a chance, forget the past. When the heart rules the mind, one look and love is blind. When you want the dream to last, take a chance, forget the past. When the heart rules the mind, one look and love is blind. When you want the dream to last, take a chance, forget the past. Seasons will change. You must move on. Follow your dream.
Wow, even now listening to it all these years later, that song I believe was released in '85 or '86. And yeah, what do you think? I don't. Have you ever heard that song before?
I have not. I don't believe I've ever heard the song, and I'm not familiar with this band either, GTR. And
What do you think?
yeah, man, they are tight, and those are some really nice guitar licks. You know, the arpeggios, really nice vocal harmonies as well, and an interesting breakdown with the bass drum there. That's pretty cool with the mallets. Pulled the mallets. I don't know. Was that a bass drum or a timpani? It was a timpani.
Yeah, timpani. Yeah, yeah. This band was made up of session players also, and they just lasted one album and a couple of years. But what a great tune, you know, and no one's ever heard of it now. You know what I mean? This is the mid '80s kind of like a super group, you know.
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of in the spirit of bands like Journey, Rush, that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. Yeah, the fat harmonies, and again, you know, those vocal harmonies and pulling those off, not an easy thing to do, especially live. But just yeah, very nice arrangement.
Yeah, it's weird. They just they lasted for one album, and that's it. Obviously the band reminds me of Genesis and Yes, because they had the members of those form the group, those two guitarists. But again, you know, the thing I noticed about the song selections today that we both chose, I think they were all longer than 5 minutes. And this was about 5 minutes. What does that tell you? You know, all these songs are like 5 minutes and more. And you notice this song as well, it had a middle section with acoustic guitars and classical guitars. And it took its time. It's a studio, you know, it wasn't a live version, but it was, even the studio version is 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And it had the beautiful arrangements with those guitar, and that was like very kind of ethnic sounding. But that was incredible. I mean, they
Where
put
you know
that in there.
Are these where are these musicians from? Are they all American musicians or any thoughts?
The two guitarists are Brits, and then the other ones and then the singer is British, and then the rest of them I think are American, but they're all studio cats and incredible.
So
there's those people there.
There are no Irish musicians in there, are there?
I don't think
Or are
so.
there?
Why?
I don't know. It just there was the lead vocalist for some reason gave me sort of an Irish sort of vibe.
Ah,
Just the way that he sang and the with the, you know, it's pretty common for many British artists to sing using an American accent rather than a British accent, and maybe that's why. But it just for some reason it just said Irish to me. I'm not sure why.
yeah, it might be. Yeah, he's got a really high range. He's got. They wanted. I think the people that formed the group, they wanted a vocalist that sounded the same as John Anderson, the vocalist for Yes, had that higher range to it. They wanted, and he sounds great. But I think I was reading somewhere that this vocalist here, he owns a pub now, or he did a while back. He doesn't sing anymore, but he sounds great. And the mid '80s, man, that was. And this, I think this tune is an underrated tune. And most people, obviously, because the band only lasted a few years, haven't heard of this song. And I remember it got some radio play, but yeah, this is shades of Yes and Genesis and Asia, that band Asia, and that kind of progressive guitar-based stuff. But it's got some beautiful interlude stuff with the acoustic guitar and the timpani and everything, and that was a great first concert. That was a great experience. It wasn't a huge concert, but I could hear everything. And when they did the cover of Roundabout by Yes, which has like this impossible bass line, they were tight, man. The whole band was tight, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. That kind of kicked off my like wanting to go to more rock concerts, and that was a great time, and yeah, something I will not forget.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and I'm gonna have to check out some more of this band.
Yes, they just had the one album, yeah. So yeah, it's it's a rock band, but they're kind of progressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
you got another tune?
I just may.
Cool.
All right, here we go. Let me pull something up here.
Isn't that cool? We're discovering new music. Like that first band, I had never heard that song, and that's cool that like I really dig that. And now you never heard of this band, and I played you that song. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna play something here. Speaking of concerts, there's another concert I'm thinking of, and I'm gonna play this first, and then I'll talk about the concert. But here we go. All right.
Yeah. Dig it. I love
Kind
the
of
energy.
a flamenco vibe going on there.
Definitely.
So a friend of mine who was also an expat in China and also a guitarist introduced me to this duo. And so they actually did a concert in Hong Kong, and we went to Hong Kong to check out this concert. And it was really nice. You know, it wasn't like a big stadium type concert. It was just a medium-sized venue where everybody is standing. There's no seats or anything. And they did their thing, just the two of them. And what really struck me is just how big the sound was, because it's just two guitars, but they were rocking the house out like a full-on band would be rocking the house out. And it's because of Gabriela's percussiveness, the way she plays that thing, and the way she had it mic'd up, it sounded like there was a bass drum thumping in there the whole time. And it just worked really well. And I thought that the energy of it, obviously they have some really solid skill and strong sense of rhythm, and it just really carried it. And I was just really impressed with how they could carry the crowd that way, and they really hardly even spoke the whole time. It just was, wow. But the crowd was going nuts. And it was just really an experience, and nothing quite like I'd seen before. Being able to generate that kind of energy with just a duo, So it was a very enjoyable experience.
That's really important. I mean, it takes a special performer to have that kind of energy. Just two guitars and no vocals. Yeah. And the chord progression is just pretty simple. It's like 3 or 4 chords over and over again.
Yes.
They're using their feet, they're using their hands to, hit the guitar in a certain groove, use it as a percussion instrument, and the energy level. I think that's what musicians need to learn. Not only do you need to know your instrument, but there's a performance. Your presentation is so important. Your energy level is so important. That speaks volumes of like who you are as a person and what you're trying to portray. Everybody has to find their way to speak that kind of energy, to move around a bit more, and it's amazing when two people, like as you described, can rock the house playing instrumental guitar acoustically. That's great. That's something to learn. That's something to every musician needs to be a performer as well, and especially in certain cases.
Yes, and performance art does not necessarily mean you have to break a guitar on the stage, just so everybody knows. I hope those weren't expensive guitars. And they did not break any guitars in this particular concert, although Gabriela, as I recall, did break a couple strings. She plays that thing really hard. She's killing those strings. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool. I got one more. This is a song that I used to listen to. And it sounds like a very simple song, and in a lot of ways it is, but I really, years later, I really dig the song, how much it swings, and there's just something about it that I like. Here it is. Doesn't that swing?
Yes, it does. And that song was under 5 minutes too, which was just what it needed to be. It was just what it needed to be. It was perfect. It just had everything, and there was even room for solos in there.
Yes. Did you know that this song is about 100 years old now? The original.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh.
And this song was written around the time of Prohibition, and then it also, throughout that decade, this was written in the early 1920s. And then late 1920s, we had the Depression. And so if you think about the lyrics of this song, nobody knows you when you're down and out. When you're doing well, hey, everybody wants to be your friend. But when you got no money, you ain't got no friends. And so you had this Prohibition, then the Great Depression, and that's just, and this was originally a vaudeville tune. It's blues kind of vaudeville kind of vibe to it, but man, just the way Clapton sings it. And I'll say this about Clapton like I did Steve Lukather. What a great singer he is, don't you think? The vocals make it. Yeah, even more than the guitars.
Oh, he is. No, he's outstanding. Just a all around talented person. Um, the song sounds pretty happy and carefree for something that's about kind of a depressing subject for a blues. Yeah, but it's pretty happy. Any idea what key that was in? Can you tell?
It's in. I transcribed this to him. It's easy though. It's just a set of. It doesn't. It's just a set of changes, and it doesn't change keys or anything. It doesn't. It's just a set of. I don't know how many bars it is. I got the chart somewhere. But
I was just listening to the piano. I was listening to the piano player, and some piano players that play with guitar players all the time. They're used to playing in those guitar keys. I just find it hard to sound as bluesy in some of these guitar keys. So I'm just kind of curious. But just that pianist is very nice as well. Just really,
yeah, the band is killing it. I mean, this is so far from the clip that I heard from Toto, but this kicks ass just as much. You know what I mean? In terms of energy.
It's
you know
not it's deceptive. It's not easy to play a song like this.
Not to swing like that. No.
Yeah, to play it in the pocket and to have everybody staying out of each other's way and just fitting together so nicely, especially pianists and guitarists. This is unless there's a fixed arrangement, it's very hard on a song like this just to give everybody their space, and they do it so nicely, and they're playing in ranges that complement each other. It's very skillful, and it's a different kind of skillful, but it's incredibly skillful.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, I mean, I've transcribed this tune. It's easy to transcribe, and I played the arrangement. It's an easy arrangement. The arrangement is like very kind of it's pretty easy. It's, what's the word? It is well thought out, but it doesn't waste anything. It's just simple, and it goes up a minor third at the end, and it goes back down, and that's it. And then you end the tune. And it's so far from what we heard on Rosanna, at the ending of that was like crazy ending. But this is it's great that music can be, swing just as hard and make you feel like they're two great bands, but they're like polar opposites apart in terms of it's using a different kind of technique. And as you say, this technique is kind of staying out of each other's way. But both valid, both kicks ass.
I would have loved to have seen that live. I envy that audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the early days of MTV Unplugged. Do you remember that series?
Yeah.
This was the early days, and that Clapton album, MTV Unplugged, that's a beautiful album. That's just incredible.
It is. That's the one with the super famous version of Tears in Heaven, isn't it? Or I think he does that on there. Yeah, and which is a great song. But, it's, in my opinion, it's not the best song on there. It's just the one that just happened to take hold. But there's,
yeah. This is a great tune, and the original is like 100 years old, and it's just, I love this tune. Like years later, listening to it, and people should check out that MTV Unplugged, the Clapton version. I think Steve Gadd's on there too. Of course, really? There's the who's who of musicians on there. There's Nathan East on bass, if you just saw that. And I don't know who the percussionist was, but that whole band, Studio Cats, and the backing vocals. But it's a very simple song and a very efficient arrangement, but simple. And the audience loved it.
Yeah. And as I said, simple songs, don't let them deceive you.
Yes.
They can be played very well, and they can also be played very, very badly.
Yes.
And this is just, when you get musicians of this caliber and that experience, and you put them together, they can take a simple song and just really make it sing like that.
and swing the heck out of it. Yeah, I love it.
Well, today we presented quite a bit of music today, and so I hope that our viewers enjoyed the songs that we shared today. It's quite a bit different than what we've been talking about in the last 3 episodes, where we talked a lot about the 70s and we're getting into some funk and you know, I really, there's so much to explore out there. I don't even hardly know where we can go next, but
oh yeah, I mean, and the thing I realize is we haven't really listened to any jazz yet. We listened to some progressive stuff, but not really jazz, which is fine. But
the show is called Jazz Hands, but that doesn't mean anything. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But you know,
yeah, we'll listen to some jazz, I promise. But I just love doing this. I just love listening to tunes, and I love hearing tunes for the first time and hearing your take on it and why you like it. And they are interesting. All those tunes are really interesting, and it's cool to share stuff like that.
Me too. I do love surprises, and so I hope we can find some more kind of off the beaten path kind of things to share. And I know that our audience will enjoy that as well, because this is a chance to also get to learn about some new music that maybe we weren't previously aware of.
Yeah. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I hope everybody has a good week, and we'll keep listening to music and have a great week.
See you next time on Jazz Hands.
See you guys later. Love it.